Hello, Jay. Sorry to interrupt, but there's no sound on the Zoom.
Linda, thank you so much. You just saved the reading. Can you hear me now? Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Awesome.
thanks.
Linda, thank you so much. Linda saved the reading. So I do have to repeat something for those of you who are on Zoom, and let's say that you're a student in the Low Residency Creative Writing Program. Your pairing form is due tomorrow. It is Saturday, and the pairing form is due on Sunday. So that's just an FYI for you all. Tomorrow, yeah. Tomorrow night, we are having our night out about the town. We will have 4 readers. We are going to the Independent Publishing Resource Center. It's a beautiful community print shop. It's where transdisciplinary arts hangs out for sure. Our 4 readers will be Pupe Misagi, Scott Nadelson, Dal Strom, and Stephanie Adams Santos. That is a mask required reading, just to let you all know. And we will have masks there. So that is tomorrow, Sunday, the 23rd. Tonight, we have 2 readers, Sara Sutter and myself. Sarah Jeanette Sutter, is it? Yeah, okay. Sarah Jeanette Sutter is a writer, educator, student, and psychonaut based, I love that, based in Portland, Oregon. Sarah holds a BA in philosophy, an MFA in poetry and creative nonfiction, and is now in their 2nd year at California. Actually, you finished. You finished the California Institute of Integral Studies. You are a graduate. Congratulations. Where they focus on somatic and psychedelic assisted therapy. Sara teaches literature and creative writing at University of Portland, PNCA here, PNCA Willamette, and virtually at Harrisburg Area Community College. While Sara's most recent writings have been toward fulfilling academic requirements, published works appear in Fence, the Seattle Review, Nailed Magazine, and others, along with her chapbooks, Oh, to Be a Dragon, Finishing Line Press 2016, and Sirenomelia, for Claudia 2013. Sara is slowly at work on a new hybrid project that explores the generative and spiritual qualities of trauma. Let's give it up for Sara.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Hi. Thank you, Jay. Can you all hear me? No. Is this better? Okay, thanks. So I have a group of poems that I've been working on since the last residency when I heard Laura Mimosa and Jess Arendt talk about the practice of 20 lines a day. I felt really inspired by that correspondence that they had and seeing how that instilled a regular practice into their lives. And I asked a couple of friends who like to write here and there, and we took it and made it our own. So yeah, I'm excited to have this sort of full circle moment to share what was inspired from that residency. And yeah, and it's been a really cool practice to just drop into and like have an infrastructure for writing built into the day that isn't actually necessarily sitting down and writing literature in this super serious way, but having it kind of become sometimes a requirement and other times a delight, but whichever one, just part of the day. So I curated a little selection of these, and the dates are mixed up, but it just feels like intuitive chronology. The first one is May 31st. It's the third night on the road. We found the most idyllic valley. It reminded me of my first time boating the river and meeting that young girl playing in a stand of beach willows. We pitched our tent near them and a flock of yellow irises. We watched eagles and vultures do their soaring circles at the valley's high edge, a snake in the dry grasses, seeds sticking to socks, a flash of fish leaping for a fly dinner. Corey's hair dried in ringlets, and he said it was the most beautiful he's felt. I read 100 pages of dry land, between wondering why on earth I felt so tired, knowing sure well why, and how so many of us complain about our needs for rest. None of us want to die. We fell asleep with the Vespers, and I dreamed of my mother's mother, Ruth, also a mother to me. She looked like she had gotten some Botox. She was searching for something in the fridge, and it became the mustard one in my kitchen on Cedar Ave, the one with the nail polish bottles on the shelf in the inside door. I said, "Nan, how did you get here from the dead?" She said, "It's a program similar to the one in Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. A very new program that allows the departed soul to come back for a visit." "I probably won't get another for a while," she said. I started to cry in shock and remembrance and shame because maybe I had forgotten her. Are you with everyone else where you are? And in that moment, we both knew exactly who I meant, how we blessed everyone together before bed. "I am," she said. I woke up to the full sun over the valley, blazing, and Corey in his sunglasses beside me. January 12th. The All About Cancer welcome video differentiates between DNA mutation and inherited mutation. TLDR mutation is constant, like God is changed, but cellularly. When we took the LSD, she couldn't stop saying cellularly after everything she said. "The flowers are so vibrant, cellularly. I feel a shift, cellularly." It was like standing inside a digital photo saying pixel over and over. I couldn't bring myself to complete the survey. It felt like people pleasing, but for AI. He came home from his first day at the job and said, "Babe, AI is people." Texting my cousin about Nana's cancers at the end of her life, the doctor said she had the ovaries of a teenager. They were glowing, a notion of estrogen dominance. When my mom and her mom got the diagnoses, I wanted to start a group chat for all the kids with tits, call it breasties. We could talk about seed cycling, turkey tail, grief, and fear. If I have a daughter, I will teach her what to eat to keep her strong while she's bleeding. June 3rd. In my dream, I had a reptile kit with a silver gilt egg and a dead, rotting snake inside. I dropped the egg into a perfectly egg-shaped hole in the floor of my grandmother's house, and then I spilled dead snake water everywhere. Corey and I had sex before we got out of bed this morning, 47 days before we get married. The oolong was a gentle climb through petrichor. I looked around with my heart in my chest propelling. We curated the music for the walk down the path. I don't want to say aisle. I'm grateful for the rain because it gives me permission to feel my exhaustion. The work of a human being to unlearn not feeling. I can't explain it other than by saying, when someone dies, I feel closer to them. The lifelong ambiguous grief of my father has gifted me this. Tonight at dinner, I joked about having an enormous dog and naming him Father, wearing my pain like badges on a Girl Scout sash. I'm annoyed when the lines want to be a poem, like I'm abandoning myself. My real pup lowers her head and presses her face into my leg, which I understand to be one of the ways that she hugs me. I've come to believe that wisdom and sensitivity lie belly to belly. The atmospheric river has been a persisting trickle. The peony's tight fist wants just as badly to open. I want everyone to know I feel great even though I'm 39, as though the fear of aging and death isn't mine. I want to teach a child how to feel at home in the woods. April 8th. The fuzzy palpus of the dandelion before it disintegrates is how delicate the dress is. No one wearing makeup, sunscreen, lotion, jewelry with fingernails, teeth, or sharp features can touch it. It is prohibited to let animals, children, or any other species in any kingdom or phylum near. There's only one day out of the year in the Northern Hemisphere during which it can be worn. Seeing the dress on a body is like encountering the tooth fairy, just as her fairy light zips itself back up into reality. The longer you wear it, the more the dress becomes a new kind of air. In a pocket of Vespers, the air is visible. It has a lavender to it. Eventually, the new air congeals into a force field that is both around the dress and is the dress. Only certain people can get past the field and breathe in the new air, but even they can only survive for about 4 breaths. They can only whisper and move their bodies wistfully. These people have their own innovations, often a form of dissociation. If you do wear it, you might start to question if you exist anymore. The questioning is comfortable. It begs feeling alive at a cellular level. The dress is a collection of cells that identify as organza. Its pronouns are fog and mist. I was trying on wedding dresses that day. June 5th. I sat in Sarah's sauna while she shared her ripest rage, scraping the dead skin off her arms and her chest, the slough falling like coconut shreds gently between us. I told her about Bio's words on how we are already living in the afterlife, our bodies returning to dust as we move through the world, become it, are it. On the acupuncture table, I start to feel myself dissolve and have that gorgeous yet sickening psychedelic feeling of my mind not steering every conscious moment. The acupuncturist had an acorn dangling from a chain from each earlobe. I drove home and quietly realized that the fall from grace in the Adam and Eve story is essentially God shaming humans for feeling shame. Heather described her anxiety about her anxiety, and I asked her if she could befriend it, which I believe really can help, but it felt like I was handing her a soggy flower when what she needed was a fire hose. It's the first day of my period, and I want a burger and fries and ice cream, but I'm preparing for ceremony, so I can't eat any of that. A dull ache over my right temple. I buy 2 pink harps of rockfish. Corey prepares them in butter and lemon and a tiny bit of Hawaiian salt with baked plantains and greens from a farm in Eugene. The June rain has me remembering my first spring in Portland. I took the bus downtown, convinced that that was where I would find a good gig in the service industry. That part of the city felt enormous yet empty, rain falling between the holes of my loosely knit angora. That year I drank whiskey sodas at the Florida Room and smoked drum rollies. Cholula sleeps with her eyes open more often the older she gets, like she's practicing for death, and Corey keeps telling me to let her be, but I need to call her name and snap her out of it every time. How are we doing with time?
Oh, you're good. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah. Feel free to stretch it out.
His hand's shaking. Okay, June 10th. This morning we finished the strawberries from last season, so we went to Saudi for more, but the fields were closed. At Sistis, I fell in love with the pineapple guava, its shedding bark and boss of stamen. Corey found solace in the nurseryman's stories of mulberry trees from Shanghai and the nettle family. A chartreuse smoke bush. I remembered snapping your photo and picking berries before your wedding, now 6 summers ago. When Corey and I met, we made a bed of linen on the river beach and fucked like it was our bedroom. We have 2 huge fallen limbs from that spot by our bed still. Today we return to the willows. An eagle tore through the ash, sent an osprey on its way. We remembered how they mate by grasping talons as they fly. Maybe it's my Sagittarius Venus, but that approach really hits. An unrelenting velocity to the unraveling soar of love. A barge made its way, an industrial music, and then a seal or some other kind of mammal, barely perceptible, but there, dogged, following the river towards some inevitable ocean. June 12th. I sat on my therapist's corduroy couch, sketching out a spectrum of ways to orient toward my mother. At one end, there's giving up. I have been here before, no contact and doom. Then there's acceptance, an elusive yet possible space of detachment and realism. Next is the growth zone, a phase rooted in acceptance, but open and hopeful to small shifts in growth. The most brutal space at the other end is the never to be realized ideal, the perfect notion of what our relationship could be. Where are you now? My therapist asked. Maybe rapid cycling through all 4, I joked, but also wasn't joking. One of the most heartbreaking truths of my life is that my attachment is formed around this needing to weigh my self-protection against my intimacy with her. How Prentice Hemphill defines a boundary as the distance from which I can love both you and myself. This weighing is something we all do all the time, even if it starts out as a child's quietude. There's a layer of attuning to them when it means leaving you, and then the core experience of feeling is never felt. I told my therapist how disgusted I feel by how my mother's life and vitality have been consumed by earning money. This exploitation, but also just another form of mothering in the sense of a body giving what it has to another body to live. I started to imagine what a new ritual with her could be. I left therapy and went to get my wallet at the market where I forgot it. Someone brought it to the lost and found, which reinforced my sense of goodness in the world, goodness that I won't be stolen from. And before I left, I grabbed 2 bouquets of peonies, only ringing myself up for one, because fuck corporations, and I am the child no one is watching in self-checkout. Innocent crimes. I'll just read one or maybe 2 more and call it a day. This is a pretty recent one, June 17th. This is a series of dreams. My mother climbed onto a suspension bridge, and I watched her up there, drunk, worrying for her. But it was all part of a performance, and everyone cheered her on, no one noticing anything strange about it other than my concern. One of the tender facts of trauma is that it's rarely the thing itself that creates the memory, but the fact that one goes it alone. I remembered the long corridor outside the kindergarten classroom. The journey from one end to the other was terrifying, especially at the end of a winter day when no lights were left on to help us find our way into the night. A life under boomer tutelage, a receiving of dogma and indoctrination against the feeling and perceiving self. A Myers-Briggs world of all K and J, a world that senses genocide and can disconnect and deny because that is the collective manifestation of a person who doesn't feel what they feel. I was walking along the charming street in lava PAs, trying to decide where and what to eat, but I turned up the hill and pulled frozen meals from my Nana's freezer instead. I was driving 2 cars at once. One was the Subaru I always drive, and the other was a truck that belonged to an ex, and it was giving butch excellence. The dashboard was covered in the vintage cameras of my fiance, and I was trying to figure out how to drive so that the cameras wouldn't fall and break along wide turns. I think I'll stop there. Thank you all so much for listening. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Very awesome. Okay, um. So I have been reading the last few residencies about the experience of the empty nest. I've been reading the last few residencies about the experience of the empty nest. And my anticipatory grieving of that experience, which I realize that I like to grieve in anticipation. Like I like to do that preparatory work, so to speak. And it happened. And so, last year Sarah and I read some pieces from it, and I can hardly keep it together, and I felt so uncomfortable about that, but we'll see what happens here. There is a piece that I read last year called The Line. And it's basically just this kind of dreamlet about parenting a child as a kind of experience of waiting in a roller coaster line that's really long. And you just are in the line forever, and you just don't think it's gonna end, and you can't even see the front of the line, and then you see the front of the line. And it starts going super fast. And at the end, because Oscar's mom and I are divorced, there's sort of this description of, the child stepping off and going in his own direction. And then Amy and I wondering where we shall go. And I have a couple pictures that I'll attempt to show. We'll see. It happened. A hurricane in Southern California, the drop off. A family vacation redo. Dulling the pain of remembering severance by creating loving connection, making presence. I have been anticipatory grieving the loss, how else to say it, of Oscar's daily presence in my life. The loss of his childhood and mine for 3 years now. I forgot to dedicate this to Roy and Matt, who are headed in this direction. I never viewed it as preparatory work, but I realize it has been, among other things, exactly that. It tuned me into the ephemeral nature to attachment. That attachment, a kind of flow, ever-changing, always in motion, imbricated, like the way one season emerges within another or lingers and haunts another. Oscar started leaving our respective houses 18 months ago, hanging out with his friends till late, weekend trips with the cross-country and track teams, dating and falling in love. Things begin before things end. Loss tangles with gain, ascension with decline. I call out Oscar's name. He's sitting on the couch, his ear pods in, so he can't hear me. He doesn't answer me. He's gone and not gone. I call out Oscar's name and he answers. We're FaceTiming. He's in Southern California and me and Amy are in Portland. He calls out my name, saying, "Daddy, here I come," as he scoots downstairs from our shared bedroom to the kitchen. We're still married. Oscar and I are going to watch Gordon Ramsay's cooking show as I make dinner for the three of us, as Amy and I take the elevator up from the underground parking lot to the ground floor clinic where Amy's ultrasound appointment is. And I say, "Oscar, what do you think of the name Oscar?" I'm calling out Oscar's name for the first time, his body already attuned to our voices. Where are we now? Where are you now as you hear this? Like love, death, procreation, maturation, grief, grief is an elemental human experience. Absence always shapes presence from the get-go. While one might have distinct grief experiences, loss of X, of Y, our grief experiences are all connected and seem to always reshape themselves as both singular and shared, individual and collective. That I had to do the work of grieving the loss of my family. This meant reckoning with exactly why and how this loss occurred and how the constituent self-destructive behaviors continued on into my divorced life. So that I could also do the grief work of letting Oscar walk into his adult life makes sense to me. That both of these experiences connect to my grief over the loss of my family of origin, or that they all nest in one another. All of this also makes sense to me. Love works like this. One love expands into other loves, and it can all feel like one big love or like capital L love. Doing this anticipatory work nudged me to try to remain present with all of it, trying my hardest to focus my attention to the work of parenting in this particular moment, helping Oscar get settled into his new life, witnessing it, letting him introduce us to it, to his new emerging selves, soaking up the excitement of it, the ordinariness of it. And that presence made for a more connected experience than I could have ever imagined. When we dropped him off, we kept things light. We let him guide the experience. When his face communicated to us that it was time for us to leave, we left. The piece, the line, to which I referred as my artist statement, is no longer my artist statement. The ending in particular doesn't portray what actually happened. It expressed with accuracy what I was feeling at the time I wrote it: sorrow, loneliness, bewilderment, and confusion. But what actually happened was that we had a loving family weekend together. On the car ride down, we chatted. We listened to our own music. We listened together to a podcast. We had fun. We laughed. We allowed for quiet too. If one of us became stressed, the other brought in calm. In short, we made family. The 20 minutes before we parted, I had the feeling like I was about to jump off a cliff into an unknown that I could never explain why terrified me. My body shook and I felt incredulous too. Like no way was this actually happening. Right up till we parted, we enjoyed one another's company. And when we did part, I choked up and could only hug him and say goodbye. He was so over it. And could only hug him and say goodbye, and that I loved him, and then he walked away. I don't know if you can see this, owl, Zoom people, but that's a picture that Amy took. That. Amy took this photo. And then the two of us, as the line does not imagine, didn't ask the workers if we could turn back to look at each other. We walked back together to the car. We sat in the car amid tropical storm Hillary, slashing barrages of rain, and cried together. I told Amy that this drive reminded me of not only the drive home from the hospital, But the earlier one, when we picked up our first dog, the instance of starting a family that would grow to include another dog, both pugs, and then Oscar, our third pug. Amy told me that for her, this drive reminded her of our last trip to Los Angeles, when not even a week after we told Oscar about divorcing and living apart, we all took a road trip to LA. Oscar was 11. We planned it months in advance, and Oscar loved trips, and we needed to keep for him the promise of this trip. To communicate to him that we were not giving up on our family. As you can imagine, the trip was difficult. We inhabited or trapped inside of a car of sorrow. Amy livid with me, Oscar sad, me behaving maniacally by chasing a woman outside my marriage. As the rain slapped the vehicle's windshield, Amy said there was no way within that first road trip moment that she could have imagined the three of us in this new moment. Oscar, strong, autonomous, not carrying the sorrow of our divorce any longer. Amy and I, close friends. Our love for one another that despite our new family shape, we could still share together. I told Amy that I was so grateful for her, indebted to her for being there, a constant, when I struggled to be there. I told her I would do anything she asked me to do, anything she needed, and she said she'd need me to continue this grief experience. Sharing it. And of course, we need each other to continue co-parenting and sharing the experience of witnessing our son into his adult life. It doesn't end, Roy, in that. Parenting still exists. We did what we did when we'd been married. We'd activated our friendship. We drove back to the hotel and shared a joint. The next morning, I dropped her off at the airport and began my drive back to Portland alone. But I wasn't tearing up or feeling sad because I was in the middle of LA freeway traffic and had to focus. Amy was navigating the Ontario International Airport security lines, and Oscar was asleep in his dorm room. It was 4:42 a.m., August 22nd, 2023. And even as our family felt stronger than ever, we were all three now pursuing separate spacetimes. I read Larry Levis's poem, The Spell of Leaves, before Amy and I had Oscar, likely before we were married. But likely we were together, and I most definitely felt was being guided by a profound sense of severance that was in turn shaping not only the relationships I attempted to cultivate, but my entire worldview. The poem, I believed at the time, spoke to this severance. In the poem, the speaker imagines a divorced couple and their son sharing the same moment in time, all from separate spaces. The woman walks out to the car and sits in the passenger seat, awaiting her husband, now ex, to walk out of the house and get into the driver's seat. But he's not coming because he's left the family. And she's doing this, sitting in the passenger seat and waiting for her husband, her ex, out of habit and her habit to what her body expects to be close, encounters the absence of ex. She's waiting, realizing he's not coming at all, remaining in the passenger seat, immobilized. And eventually she shimmies over the parking brake in gear. Shimmies over the parking brake and gear shifter into the driver's side. But before she does this, her thought, I'm gonna read some passages from the poem, so that's why I'm doing the quotation. Her thought collects in pools, yet keeps widening until now it casts its spell. And the speaker imagines the woman imagining her son sitting in a classroom 5 minutes into recess. Quote, he sits alone, listening, the classroom windowless, and he knows the moment when the stillness finds his father. The husband, now ex, sits in an apartment, a teapot whistling, as he gazes out the window at snow falling. The poem moves swiftly from the husband father back to the boy in the halls, listening to the older students. Quote, their whispers are the high, light rustling of leaves. This is the spell of consciousness. That one thing immediately turns into another, for that one thing is also another. It seems right that the poem moves from the parents, that the parents themselves want to not be thinking of their own situations, but that of their sons. Levis describes the action of consciousness with the words rustling, thought, stillness, cast a spell, and the spell's hush, drawing our attention away from their separation and towards their respective experiences of consciousness. Grief works in this way. We process it in the stillest of instances. We are using stillness in time to process the grief of time having passed. This is a longer passage from the poem. And God forgive me, and God forgive me. I keep watching them now. In this moment, 2 days after the father has slumped out, I keep waiting for the next thing to happen. And that is the problem. Nothing happens. Nothing happens at all. It is as if time itself sticks without knowing it in this wide place. I had mistaken for a moment. Sticks like the tip of the father's left forefinger to the unwiped, greasy kitchen countertop. The speaker, an omniscient first person, is separate from the husband, father figure, even though anybody who's a poet at the moment the book is published in 1991 knows the poem makes use of autobiographical material, knows that Levis is using the third person to get a closer glimpse of his own situation, his separation from the poet Marcia Southwick and their son, perhaps further de-emphasizing the split in what might have caused it in order to center this shared and separate presence and absence all three are encountering. The poem resonates with me, has resonated with me since Amy and I split and Oscar, early adolescence, began doing more social school activities apart from us. But it's now in this moment after he has left us that the poem most haunts me, fills me. I keep watching them now. Presence in absence means listening, watching, dreaming, remembering. I keep watching them too, Larry. I keep watching the three of us. Fact, three of us will share space-time, but we will mostly share time without space. That is, we will be walking around in the world separately and connected. A friend of mine used the phrase invisible strings to describe the matter that connects parents and children across space-time. What my life experience has taught me about this poem is that this is not just a grief poem, i.e. I lost my family and now miss their presence, but a poem about connection, about familial ties, about invisible strings. The point of view, a separate speaker imagining the three of them, gathers not their separation, but the space they share within the mind of the speaker, the spell, the stillness. Oscar's childhood has ended. Amy and I are no longer raising a child. This part of our lives is over. For all of us, straight. This part of our lives is over for all of us. And we can reconnect with it through imagination, memory, and story. We remain together, albeit in a different way, a new way too. This new together is undergirded by the same old love, by shared past, family ties, and a sincere desire to be in one another's company. And God forgive me, I keep watching them now. Each time the dream is similar. Someone opens the door, walks into the apartment. It's either Oscar or an intruder, and I call Oscar's name, no response, and I call his name again. Oscar, is that you? Oscar, Oscar? Still no response, and now I try to say his name louder, but something clamps down on my diaphragm, so my voice only comes out as a whisper. He can't hear me. Yes, he's there, but he can't hear me, so I scream, whisper, Oscar, Oscar, this actual sound waking me as it rises like a dried out sponge into the empty space of my bedroom and out the window screen. And I know my downstairs neighbor, a young person in their 20s whose bedroom is right below mine. We both keep our windows open, can hear this middle-aged man calling for his son who cannot answer because he cannot hear his dad, because he is no longer in the apartment, no longer in the city and state in which the apartment is located. The other drive that came to mind that happened 4 years before your birth. This is a letter to Oscar now. The other drive that came to mind that happened 4 years before your birth, back from Southern Oregon with our pug puppy. Not even 10 weeks. Me driving and Chewy sitting in Amy's lap, panting heavily. We feel terribly worried about Chewy's struggle to breathe. We don't realize she's car sick. Dogs get car sick very easily. We think she's dying. Her panting grows faster, heavier. Amy and I are so young, still in our 20s. We're panicking. I'm pulling off I-5 and into a KFC where we fetch a bowl of water, and outside the car in a small patch of grass, Chewy, no longer feeling carsick, drinks from the water, then runs between us from your mom to me, from me to your mom. Here I come. Oscar, here is the beginning of our family. This wobbly puppy line Chewy scratches out between your mom and me, this little pug making a space that is for you. You're taking shape, becoming a possibility, a desire to create another life form onto which we can hold, by which we can be held. Chewy runs from your mom to me, from me to your mom. When 4 short years later, we bring you home, Chewy immediately tries to mother you, protect you. She lives 16 years. This is a long pug life in protection of all of us. When your mom and I decide to divorce, or we take time to figure out what to do with the house, I move into the basement apartment next door. In your mom's bed, Chewy, disoriented by my absence, feeling your mom's grief, cannot get comfortable. She circles around a spot, then lies down, grudgingly trying to find a sleep shape, stands, then limps over to the edge of the bed, as if she needs to go out. And your mom takes her out, but Chewy just stands there in the rain, not moving, and back in bed, dried off, circles, lies down, stands, repeats these motions in your mom's bed, and your mom asks me to take her in my basement apartment so she can get some sleep, and Chewy does the same thing in my bed, and your mom and I end up taking turns not sleeping with Chewy. After we move across town into our separate places, her restlessness seems to settle. The two of you travel together from your mom to me to your mom to your from your mom to me to your mom to me. Amy and I both believe that Chewy's body begins to sunset. She begins to let go the whole life has on her, only after you have grown accustomed to living between our separate houses. Your mom and I take this photo on Chewy's final morning on Earth, a few hours before the vet arrives at Amy's new house to put Chewy to sleep. This was my artist statement in the fall, but it is no longer my artist statement. I'm not disclaiming it. But yeah, it was my artist statement into the fall after leaving Oscar, but is now no longer. You're lost. You don't know where you are or where you're going. Everything feels strange. The choices you make, go straight, turn left, flip on the light switch, open the refrigerator door, appear as familiar choices, but thrown with a lambent strangeness that casts everything as unfamiliar, without sense of arrival. What you think you know, you don't. And that is the repeated pattern of your motion. From the illusion of recognition to the reality of strangeness. One, then the other. No, one within the other. Your motion is uncharted, quiet, are ubiquitous, quiet. You can't find your way. A body close to yours for many years has absented itself. The quiet is a cold soaking, the body absent and the space empty. Confusion and disorientation emerge as zones of being, inside of which you feel sorrow, lonely, restless. You're not in immediate danger because this present moment, time now indefinite, continues to carry you into the next without any discernible destination. A quiet that is ghost, that goes subterranean and solar at once. Destination is illusion. Arrival is illusion. There's no space-time to which you belong other than this motion of searching for what, this motion to where. Your life is a ceaseless question mark. This is the afterlife, thinking about bio. This is the inevitable. You look around at all of the people and spaces they inhabit, impenetrable and impossible, and you enter into them anyway, and they push you right back out, like your destination is no place. The quiet rising from within and extending beyond, you stay in motion, you're lost. No structure or space holds your being. No, the quiet is the atmosphere holding you, the holding of not holding you think. Grace. Thank you. let's give Sarah another round of applause. Thank you, Sarah. for what you do. All right, y'all, IPRC tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. It's gonna be good. Have a good evening. Oh.